Okay, so you want to own a gas station. Everybody needs fuel. Cars roll through every single day, whether the economy is up or down. And it looks like the closest thing to a recession proof cash machine you could possibly buy into. Here's the problem: on the fuel itself, you're barely making any money at all. And the part of this business that actually pays your bills isn't the pumps out front, it's the snacks and drinks sitting behind the counter. By the end of this, you'll know what it actually costs to open a gas station in America, why selling gasoline is basically a loss leader dressed up as a business, and why one politically connected family's gas station company left taxpayers holding a $21 million cleanup bill. Let's start with getting in the door. Buying an existing station typically runs somewhere between $250,000 and $2 million, depending on size, brand, and location. And that's before you touch a single pump. Build one from scratch. Land acquisition alone can run half a million to over $2 million. Construction of the building and canopy adds another 1 to 3 million, and then you still need 50 to $150,000 just to stock the convenience store shelves for the first time, plus another 40 to $60,000 to fill the underground tanks with your first batch of fuel. All in, a full ground up build with a franchise brand attached can easily cross $3 million before you've sold a single gallon. And then there's licensing, which for a gas station is its own maze. You need a motor fuels retail license, weights and measures certification to prove your pumps are dispensing the correct amount, OSHA compliance for handling hazardous materials, a sanitation permit if you're running food service, fire department sign off, and in most states, proof of financial responsibility for the underground tanks specifically, because those tanks are considered an environmental risk from the day they go in the ground. All told, permits and legal fees alone typically run $10,000 to $50,000, and that's before you've paid a lawyer to review your fuel supply contract. So where does the money actually come from? And here's the part that surprises almost everyone. Fuel sales generate the vast majority of a gas station's revenue, often two-thirds of the total, but the profit margin on that fuel is somewhere between 1% and 2%. Industry data puts the gross margin around 35 cents a gallon, but once you factor in credit card processing fees, delivery costs, and the rent or lease on the tanks themselves, the actual net profit often comes down to just a few cents per gallon. Sell 4,000 gallons in a day, which is a solid, healthy volume for a single station, and you might clear only $100 to $300 in real profit from all of that fuel combined. The convenience store is where the real business lives. Even though in-store sales are typically only around 30% of a station's total revenue, they generate something like 70% of total profit dollars, according to industry trade data. Snacks, drinks, hot food, and lottery tickets carry margins of 30 to 60%, sometimes higher, and a car wash bolted onto the property can run at 50% margin or better. This is exactly why the fuel pumps out front barely register as a profit center at all. They exist to get a car into your parking lot. The convenience store is what actually pays your mortgage. Add it all together, and a typical independent gas station owner, according to industry benchmarking data, nets somewhere around $70,000 to $250,000 a year in profit, with overall net margins across the whole business landing between 1.5% and 5%, depending on how much of your revenue comes from that convenience store instead of the pumps. That is a genuinely thin margin for a business that's moving millions of dollars a year in gross revenue. And it means a gas station has very little room to absorb a bad month, a broken pump, or a fuel price spike before the whole thing tips into the red. Now, here's the hidden cost that almost nobody thinks about until it's already a problem, and it's sitting underground the entire time you own the property. Those underground fuel tanks corrode, they leak. And when they do, the gasoline seeps into the soil and can travel into groundwater, sometimes for miles. This isn't a rare freak accident. Nationally, leaking underground storage tanks have created what's been described as a $20 billion environmental cleanup problem spread across thousands of properties, much of it dating back to tanks installed decades before anyone fully understood the risk. And when a station's owner can't cover the cleanup or simply can't be found anymore, the bill doesn't disappear. It gets passed on. In Indiana, a company called Keel Bros Oil, a business with ties to former Vice President Mike Pence's family, ran into exactly this problem. When the company's finances collapsed, the state ended up spending more than 21 million taxpayer dollars decontaminating the gas stations that company had owned. That's not a hypothetical worst-case scenario in a textbook. That's real money, spent because a business that looked like a simple fuel and snacks operation was quietly sitting on an environmental liability the whole time, buried a few feet under the pumps. This is the risk that never shows up on the glossy listing when you're shopping for a station to buy. A property that looks like a great deal on paper can come with old steel tanks nobody's inspected in years. And if contamination is discovered after you take ownership, in many states you can be on the hook for remediation costs that dwarf anything you paid for the business itself, sometimes running into the hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars for a serious spill. So let's close the loop. You put up somewhere between $250,000 and $3 million to open or acquire a gas station. Fuel sales bring in the bulk of your revenue, but barely any of your profit. The convenience store, the car wash, and the food service are what actually keep the lights on, generating most of your real margin off a smaller slice of total sales. In a good year, you might clear a genuinely comfortable six-figure income. In a bad year, a fuel price spike, a slow month, or a leak discovered in a 40-year-old tank buried under your own parking lot can turn a profitable little business into a liability that follows you for years. So the next time you pull into a gas station to grab a soda and fill up your tank, understand what you're actually looking at. You're not looking at a business that makes its money selling gasoline. You're looking at a convenience store that happens to have some very expensive, very old pipes running underneath it, and an owner who's betting that today isn't the day one of them finally gives out.